I would say hi, everyone, and thank you for joining our weekly webinar. We have had some interesting feedback about the first webinar we did last week. And so in the meantime, we've also engaged in some very interesting conversations with some of the attendees and colleagues that are, just as probably excited as we are about attending Web Summit in February. So yeah, without further ado, we can start, right, Anise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's skip all the introductions, Val, because I think we can do a quick introduction if you want, but I just wanted to get to the topic and discuss,
Yeah.
the key points that we have been given. So far, I think we have met with at least, 5, 6 founders, and mostly the essence I wanted to say is the essence of why founders actually, go to Web Summit. The number one reason seems to be raising capital. Most of them are pre-seed or seed. Um, they're not really going. So it looks like number one reason is fundraising. Number two seems like exposure and brand exposure. Nobody has said I'm going to Web Summit so that I can create or I can win hundreds of clients, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
really strange for me,
Yeah.
right?
And I think
And
something that speaks to the fact that most people that we've talked to are going to raise capital. And this is something we normally bring up on conversations, is that investors usually don't self-identify, right? So that kind of like introduces a barrier that I think we've cracked our heads trying to break it down and think about how we can potentially help startups kind of like approach those investors, because there's even kind of like strict guidelines about startups not fully, having full access to just approach investors during Web Summit. There's kind of like an entire protocol, and part like I partly understand why that happens, but then I think the main question is like what startups and our clients are the most hungry for is just being able to connect with investors and getting a chance to do so. And one of the main stakeholders attending Web Summit are investors. So I just wanted to say that because we also get a lot of inquiries from startups like, oh, I just want to do this on my own. Like, I want to reach out to investors. Yes, one of the challenges being investors don't usually self-identify. So I think that needs to be kind of like the part of the path where we start.
Agreed. So let's get started. I think, what we can do this time or this week is let's go through the top 10 things that founders can do before they actually, come to Web Summit, especially if they are, in the process of raising capital, right? So let's look at that one by one. Last week, we look at, maximizing the overall event and the return on investment from the event. But this week, we look at just specifically fundraising. And within fundraising, let's look at what can the founders do, almost like a DIY type of a thing, right? Is that fair? Shall I just, okay. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see my screen, after I share my screen. So let's go to Canva. Yeah, quick introductions. I mean, we will just run through this. My name is Anis. I'm the founder and CEO of Step Up One. You heard Val speak. She is also going to be at the Web Summit, one of the leading experts on fundraising. Myself and Val have worked with more than 100 companies, through their pre-seed, seed, Series A rounds. She will be there at Web Summit, and we've also got Vinny. Vinny will be there at the Web Summit as well. She brings a completely different perspective that myself and Val can never go near. You will hear from her shortly, so I'll not introduce this too much. But just jumping into the topic for today, we want to talk about 10 DIY recommendations that we want to make to founders, so that they can really understand like what they should be able to do it themselves. You do not need specialists to do some of these things, right, Val? Vinny, shall we just jump into each one by one? and spend like
That's really
60 seconds on each, and then just give a perspective, right? So that, there is some value that we've been able to give to the people who are attending Web Summit from the hundreds of raises that we have done so far. All right, let's go to the first one. Let me just read this. It's just about researching and targeting the right investors, right? Now, obviously, it's quite straightforward. I don't think I need to teach you this. You can all go to Web Summit app. You can look for the investors. There are approximately 400 plus investors who have registered. So you can look at them. And then you should be able to prioritize from that 400 which ones are the ones that you must meet, or you must connect, you must engage, and you must meet. This is like bread and butter, right?
Yeah, I think
Now,
that part of the journey, again, I just want to say this at the beginning of the presentation. DIY is, I think, as you will be able to see, very simple. You need to set time aside to do this, because you need to look at a target list of 400 contacts and then cross-reference that with what your startup is doing. And after that, just get educated on who that investor is, because you don't want just to, kind of engage in a conversation just saying, I want your money, right? Because that's not the way it normally works. So
absolutely. And now, hopefully, Val, next week, when we meet again, we will actually show how to do this next week. Because I think it's really important to show how we will log in into the Web Summit event app, how we will look at the investors, how would we, differentiate, let's say investors who are in real estate vis-a-vis investors who are, and then how would we cross-reference with Crunchbase and LinkedIn, and try to create a database of the most important investors that we do. What about, should we just try and spend a few minutes on how would we do this vis-a-vis, or should we do that next week? Well, like for example, we have our P1s and P2s and P3s, right? Should we talk about that? Maybe we should do that next week. This week, just stick to what the founders can just do it themselves.
Yeah, I think we can go over now, because it's something that, again, it's very time consuming. So if they want to get started with this, then this is the starting point of everything, right? I mean, if your main goal is to connect with investors, this is what you as a founder or as a founding team should be doing right now. And it is quite a lengthy process. It's not rocket science, but it, again, is just time consuming. So maybe we can walk them over kind of like the general process. And after that, we'll be able to share this, and it will be like a very, hopefully a useful tool for everyone that wants to start working on this.
Absolutely. No, I think, Val, let's do it next week, because we can then, also log into the app, show them the steps. This week,
show them step by step.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, this week, it's pretty straightforward. We want you to do this. It's time consuming. You need to have access to Crunchbase. You need to have access to have, maybe LinkedIn Sales Navigator to create these lists. And then probably, the event app, you need to be able to do that. But if you're able to cross-reference these three, and if you're able to, create it in your, let's say, investor CRM database, you've got it, right? Yeah. You've really nailed it, right?
You've cracked the code.
Yeah. And we're not really getting into the research part of the investors. We are simply making you make the list of the investors that you need to be worried about. There are 400, and 100% sure 300 of them don't matter to you, right? So you should be able to find the 100 that really matter.
True.
And then dive deep into the research. We are not covering the research part today. Just get the target list. If you're able to do this, you have already crossed many, hurdles. Let's go to the next one. Number 2, perfect your elevator pitch, right? I don't think, given the amount of material that is available today, right? I think, if somebody has not perfected their elevator pitch, then, investors will have serious concerns about their, abilities, isn't it? Because there is, all you need to do is, go to ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Claude, and then simply say, look, here is my elevator pitch for investors. Perfect it. I mean, even if you can do that, you actually might get something that is really cool, which is like just 10 lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now
Uh,
let me just add kind of like this is something that AI hasn't yet come to solve, right? And that the energy and the actual presentation, because as Anis was saying, now we're getting clients who, get a very on point blurb about, their company, what they do, but something that cannot again be yet substituted by AI still is the way you communicate it. And that's something you really need to practice. And that's the only way you can actually improve and get better at it. The reason why this is so important is because you are, regardless of how amazing your product is or the journey of your company and the traction that you have, if you come up face to face with an investor and you just are not able to communicate that, that passion, that engagement with what you're doing, then, it's not, despite having the perfect pitch, that's not going to work in your favor.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in summary, Val, when please pitch in whenever you want to. This is just a free flowing conversation. There are two things in summary, right? One, there is no excuse if you do not have a perfect elevator pitch. 3 to 4 one-liners. Clean one-liners that you can simply read and it makes sense to anybody, right? Number one. But Val, what you have talked is one step ahead, right? First, you have the elevator pitch, clearly written either by you or with the help of all the great AI that's available today. And the second thing is practice until it's become natural, right? And practice it. If I have to add a small pro tip, I would say you should be able to practice it by telling a small personal story, and then the pitch is basically the end of the story, isn't it? You don't have time today to go to that, but if you're in a dinner conversation, you're telling a story. The guy sitting next to you thinks that you're telling a story, but you end up pitching the product or solution or startup that you have just founded a few months ago, right? So that is the most and it doesn't come just like that. You got to be able to do this. So two elements to it. Is there any element you guys want to add, Val, Benny, on this particular thing? See, I'm being very conscious. I am not bringing the specialist. What would we do? Like, for example, we have done, Benny, you probably have seen this. We have done 5 different investors and how they would have pitched. So we have created specially engineered AI engines that can take your elevator pitch and create, let's say, if Elon Musk could have done it, how he would have done it. If Sequoia has done it, how they would have done it. If First Bank would have done it, how they would have done it. So we have researched the theses of the top 5 venture capital companies in the world and have but that we are not asking you to do that. You should be able to do a simple thing at your level to do the elevator pitch. Anything you guys want to add, Vinny and Van?
Yeah, I think 60 seconds is like a full story of the startup pitch. But usually in the casual conversations, usually they will ask, what are you doing? And you should have like one sentence to get them in the attention. So also you need to prepare that one.
Yeah,
it's amazing actually. Yeah. No, I'm just now thinking. Yeah. Go ahead, Well.
No, that the other thing that got me thinking is that you don't need to you practice pitching to anyone, right? Your family, your friends, your kids, everyone. And because I also get this feeling that a lot of the times founders kind of just feel that until they talk to the investor that's going to write the first check, they will really get, like serious about this part of the process. And it's not. You need to do it 10,000 times with people that have each one a different story and you want to make sure that the message that you're conveying is getting through anyone, right? At this point. So, just don't feel like you need to wait for the perfect investor to kind of like do a really good pitch. It's like everything adds up.
Got it. So 3 or 4 things from this conversation. Number one, perfect your pitch. Use any AI that is there to, make it short, sharp, and perfect. Second, practice it, in 10, 20 seconds. Pick one liner, two liner. Practice it until it becomes natural and becomes a part of your casual conversation. Practice it as if you can tell a story. If you could do this at these 3 levels, you're actually pretty good. Because you remember, this is not about perfecting your entire pitch deck. We are not saying that you perfect your pitch deck. We are talking about perfect your 10 seconds, perfect your 30 seconds, perfect your 60 seconds. So you can keep this in 3 modes: 20 seconds, 40 seconds, and 60 seconds, something like that, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think that's good enough. Let's move to the next one. Yeah. So here is where we are coming to the pitch deck. I mean, we have seen 1,000 pitch decks, and even today, people, come with terrible pitch decks, and especially the ones who are very experienced. They make this mistake. They think, they have to tell, typically people who work for large corporations or they've been in, other jobs, they think a pitch deck is something where you have to tell, all those things, the investor's brain has been wired to read a pitch deck. And unfortunately, they don't care, how big an organization you have come from. They just want to see the problem, solution, traction, team. It's literally wired that way. So do not try to change that wiring. Just follow a really simple, clean, investor-friendly deck. This pitch deck is not for you. You can always create these long 30 slide, 100 slide, business decks. So many things you can do. But an investor pitch deck, stick to the 10-page clean pitch deck, which basically tells the story. We are not going to educate you on how to do it. I think enough material is available there.
Yeah. And
Pick
I think
any
it needs to
template.
be
Yeah.
taken to a very high level. Like for the most part, when we come across a pitch deck, it has too much information. And we're saying like they're terrible, not because the content is terrible or because the startups are terrible. It's just because it is so technical, so detailed that this is kind of like the first contact that an investor will have with your idea. It needs to come across really simple and clean, as Anis was saying. I think those are kind of like, and those are the hardest things to get through, right? Because there's so much you want to tell about your company and your journey and how amazing, your team is and all these big companies they work with. And, in a nutshell, the problem, solution, traction, and team are basically what are going to determine whether an investor is interested enough to go to the next level and get more detailed information. But you shouldn't expect investors to have like an expertise, right? On technology, on AI, on semiconductors, nothing. This is just this is a pitch that you should be able to show to a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And they should be able to understand, oh, that's what you do.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pitch deck for idiots or pitch deck 101. I had this problem, Val, when I was pitching a long time ago, I had this problem. I thought I have to bring in my sophistication and intelligence into my pitch deck. It took me a long time to realize that a pitch deck has to be like a breeze.
Okay.
It needs to be like a breeze. It cannot be dense, and there will be opportunities. The investors are never going to invest in you without peeling every onion, every layer of your onion. They're not going to. There will be another time. There will be a workshop. There will be another time where you have to present your business inside out. So wait. Put all your sophistication, all your energy in for that day. Do not pack it in your pitch deck. I'm just spending a bit more time on this because I made this mistake many, many times, right?
Yeah.
I thought I have to impress these guys the first time, right? And that's a huge mistake. Huge mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's go to the next one. All right. This is pretty straightforward do-it-yourself tactic. Network strategically. What we mean by that is, approach the investors, obviously, not just during breaks and meals, even starting today, start approaching investors by, talking about something relevant, right? Obviously, you can only do that if you have done a bit of research about that investors, right? One of the, my favorite way of talking to them is, hey, I saw that you have done ABC, round for this particular XYZ company. It definitely, sparked some interest about, so you just talk about that, and then bring the dialogue to yours. Obviously, the investor knows the reason that you're talking to him is because you're going to pitch something to him at some point in time. They are very much aware of it. But this is a great opportunity to, bring your sophistication before you pitch. Dance, don't beat around the bush. Just come to the point very quickly, because an investor founder networking is not as a client customer, or like a vendor customer kind of a thing. It's very beautiful. It's much easy. You don't need to do any kind of song and dance with your investor. Have a quick conversation, and along the conversation, pitch your elevator pitch, and then observe the kind of questions that they are, lead them into a conversation. You will know this in less than 5 minutes whether the conversation is going the right direction or not. What I noticed, Vinny and Val, is investors are not trying to hide their excitement. If they're excited about something, they're not trying to sort of, be
Play it
careful with
cool.
you, because like, for example, when you're pitching some big idea to a client, even though your client is very excited, they never show it to you. You understand, right? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know whether
Yeah.
you can relate with it. The
Yeah.
client is like, oh no, I shouldn't show my excitement, otherwise this guy is, no, the investors are, if they're excited about something, they just show it pretty straight away, right? And if they're not excited about something, they show it as well. It's very clear. So it's really, really important to network strategically, and and don't make it a, strategy here doesn't mean a huge song and dance. It's a straightforward, simple thing. Anything you guys want to add to this? It's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward in my mind.
It's very straightforward, but I do want to emphasize the fact that you don't have to do an entire big protocol around, getting to talk to an investor. But what will make a difference is this really due diligence, like small basic due diligence process. Because at the end of the day, investors also, you're likely to have more success if you approach an investor and ask for advice than if you just approach an investor and ask for money, right? Because we all have a story to tell. And I would say it's part of just human nature that we gravitate towards wanting to share life experiences. So the fact that you do some due diligence on who you're talking to, what matters to them, what's kind of like the last topic they discussed on, social media, LinkedIn, the last company they invested, and how you can get so this is the thing. If you set yourself to get feedback, then most likely what you will get back, it's obviously that feedback, which will be, it's gold dust. It's really invaluable. But then, the door opens to the possibility of even, and this is something I think that's overlooked in this, but even if that particular investor does not get super excited about your idea, right? Investors have huge networks. So if you are able to efficiently communicate your pitch deck, your product, your startup, the investor will immediately think of someone they can introduce you to that is in your space. So that's kind of like the entire cycle. And I think it's oversimplified for the most part for founders. It's like, oh, I didn't get a check from this guy, so I'm just gonna walk away and forget about them. Like I think that's just too much energy put into the process to, and it's honestly, I think it's the wrong approach.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What you're saying is, even when an investor rejects you, you should network with him strategically.
Correct. I mean, these are investors. They've invested in hundreds or thousands of companies. They have business experience. So don't only go after the money. There's a lot of value that an investor can bring into your journey as a startup. And I know this is easier said than done because, as startups, all at some point struggle, and we all, we're like, we're running out of cash, and then, there's a team you need to support. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, I mean, when you kind of like shift that, then you feel that you're investing time and energy and efforts into something that's so much, it's bigger than money. That's the way I can put it.
Got it. I think tactically what you're saying, Val, is, network strategically, research the investors, talk to them about what they care, but don't do too much, song and dance, come to the point. Even when they say no, don't just run away from them, push them for a warm introduction to other investors that they might know, and many such things, right? Basically,
and nurture that relation.
Yeah.
So you've established a first contact. Like, don't let that die.
Got it. No, that's interesting. Very interesting point of view. Let's go to the next one. Benny, did you have something to add to the previous one?
Also add a little point that just to follow the Valeria said. So investors sometimes it's not just to bring you money or bring you mentorship or network and a lot of valuable resource, and themselves sometimes they will feel interested to join your startup. So I have saw some cases, some investors finally join their invested startup to become their member. So it could also be a top talent acquisition opportunity when you talk with some investors.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. Thanks, Fanny. Okay, let's move to the next point. Prepare a data room, right? This is really interesting for me. Can I say, well, I don't know your experience. You can share a number. At least 70% of the founders that we have met, they have not got a data room when we are actually talking to them. They have a pitch deck. They have a business model. They have an elevator pitch, but they have no experience whatsoever on cap table, financial model, IP documents, and the whole 9 yards, like, I think there is a huge gap, Val. I think there is a lot of founders think, okay, there is an elevator pitch and a pitch deck, and that happens, and then between that and the check, there is a lot of things that happen. And there is a serious lack of clarity. What happens between the pitch with the investor and the signing of the check, right? I think I know I'm expanding the scope of this point, but I wanted to bring that point out. I think this is a huge chasm where people don't have much idea, especially the first-time founders. They don't have too much idea about the distance between the first pitch and the first check. I think and one of the things that you need to do is the data room and the business model and the financial model and the IP, etc., etc., etc. Traction. You got to be able to show your traction. So yeah, all that is it. But I'll just stop with, you need to have a data room with a username and password. every investor worth his salt is going to ask you, okay, give me access to your data room.
Yeah. And
Right?
let me
And
say something to that, Anis.
Mhm, mhm.
So what I've in my experience, what I've heard from founders is that they feel it's too early, you know, in like the early stages, and I'm talking seed and pre-seed. They feel like there's not enough information, there's not enough financial information, right, to create, you know, to prepare the data room with, you know, substantive data and information. But that being said, I think with using any of these like AI tools, you will be able to get a very basic checklist of what your data room should include. And it's one of those things like when you don't probably attend class or study for like a semester, and then you have the final exam and you're like rushing and you want to, you know, maybe it's kind of like you're you know, you basically procrastinated, and then you're kind of like rushing into things. So starting to build your data room with the information that you have. So if you have an LOI from a client, add it to your data room, right? If you have financials only for, you know, you've done like 3 years projections, add them to your data room. By the time you come um with an investor into conversations, and and if you're the one kind of like prompting, like, you know, my data room is, because it's also fair, like under construction, there's, you know, there's still information missing, but I've got this much gathered, and it kind of, it speaks to your preparedness to kind of like take the bigger jump in your
Agree.
journey. It shows
Agree.
professionalism, it shows good
Yeah.
management from within. It doesn't look like, oh my God, I'm, you know, an investor could think, oh my God, am I engaging with like a team that's maybe has a brilliant idea, but it's like, in administrative processes, you know, it's a mess. I mean, that is kind of like a risk, I think, or a red flag, if you if you wanna put it like that,
No,
for
absolutely.
investors. So the more
Yeah.
organized you are with the information that you are able, you know, if you don't have IP, then you don't have IPs. If you're filing for an IP, add that, you know, that working document into your data room. So
Mm.
again, this is just kind of like proof, you know, for investors of your professionalism and seriousness with the work
Mhm.
you're doing.
Got it. Look, I mean, many founders have asked me, look, is this not a job of a specialist? You know, can you
Yeah.
not do this for us? You know, why do you want us founders to do this? And I always say, no, this is something that you should, as a best practice, you should always have your data room before you hand it over to a specialist. Because I think it is a do-it-yourself activity before a specialist takes over. I just want to reiterate that before I go to the next point, because a lot of founders think, you know, data room is not their job. It should be done by specialists.
Yeah. And maybe something else is, once you have your data room, if you want to, an expert to take a look at your financial, right, or your cap table, or you want to ask like a lawyer to do that, but the data room needs to be built by yourself. So that, and then you get feedback from kind of like the experts, right, in different fields.
Yeah. So, well, also one small tip, I know we have mentioned Google Drive and Dropbox, but the number one data room sharing software is DocSend.
Yeah,
Would you agree with me, Val?
I agree, because it has features that you can set, such as, you know, password. That's one thing. And another thing that we've found super useful is that you get metrics. So you get back information on if you shared your data room with someone, and if they are actually going into and looking at the files within, how much time they're spending looking at which files. So again, that kind of like that brings
There's a
in a
feedback.
lot of valuable information exactly for you. And I don't know, maybe someone missed a very important document to review, and you can be like, oh, I don't think you saw this, right? Come
Got it.
through. If
Got it.
they look at your pitch deck, you can also see how much time they're spending. They're stopping at a very specific slide. So yeah, Dobson would definitely, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm going to go to the next point.
Mhm.
Next, do it yourself for a founder. Um, oh my goodness. Yes, this is a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
In fact, Yeah. In fact, we think this one is so big that we have started creating AI chatbots
Exactly.
for this investor Q&A because I think it's too big just let me just give you some background, right? There is this investor buying journey, right? Think of that, right? What does the investor have to do before he invests in your startup? You remember we have customer buying journey or investor funding journey. So if you imagine an investor's funding journey, how he funds one of your startups, there's an elevator pitch. That's where it starts. Then I don't know whether we can show this. No, we'll do this next week. But today
Yeah,
we'll
next week
just
was
talk.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it starts with an elevator pitch. You have excited him. He goes to the pitch deck. You have excited him more. He has some niggling questions that he wants to ask you. Now, the problem is, does he book a meeting with you to get those answers? Right? So this is where we thought we will build an AI chatbot that will answer all the investors' Q&A with precise data from your cap table or financials or IP. So basically, every document that you have got in your data room, let's say you have like 5 GB of data in your data room, or 5 PDF documents or whatever. Whatever niggling question an investor has, we should be able to answer those niggling questions directly from the data that is in there in your data room, right? Now, of course, this particular DIY is not that, right? I went a bit too much. This is basically you need to know. We have got. I mean, we have 100 questions. So we have created a set of 100 questions that every investor would want to ask, and you must have the answers in your fingertips.
Yeah.
Period.
And adding to the AI, the advent of AI. So this is kind of like where I start feeling time kind of like weigh on my shoulders, because before AI, we used to do this like training session where we would role play, right? And so we would role play like, oh, and it's an investor, we have the client on call, and then he'll ask all the top like investor questions. So we help clients prepare for that. Well, now there's something else you can do besides that. That, by the way, that's very useful. But what you can do is you can feed any of these AI tools your pitch deck, your website, prompt. The prompt would be something along the lines of, what would an investor's top 10 questions would be based on this information, which is the information that the investor would have at hand, right? So maybe 3 elements to that would be your pitch deck. I mean, the version that the investor has, been exposed to, your website, your company LinkedIn profile, and your personal LinkedIn profile. So I think those 4 elements would give a fair kind of like set of questions that an investor would have in a conversation with you. And you can have them, and you can prepare for them, and you can, I think that's kind of like a good starting point now.
Absolutely. I think, we jumped into the AI based Q&A, but this is such a big deal for us. And we felt the investor journey, like literally like 70-80% of the investors, they just dropped off in this particular spot.
Yeah, when they have
they got
questions.
when they had questions, because the chasm, I mean, I'm not showing you anything, so it's difficult for you to imagine, but try and imagine with me. Investor got excited with your elevator pitch. You made him move to your pitch deck. Now, from your pitch deck, he has these niggling questions. Then there is this meeting with you. But between the pitch deck and the meeting with you, there are questions. Now, what we find is this is a huge chasm. 70% of the investors never, ever make that effort to book a meeting with you.
Yeah.
Because they fell into the Q&A chasm, which is why, despite you practicing whatever you practice, the investor is never going to book a meeting with you so that you can practice on the investor. So, which is why we created a small AI which can answer all the investor questions from the data that is there in your data room, right? So that's the, whatever I'm saying is not related to this particular aspect of do it yourself. Here, you simply do it yourself. You practice your, like Val said, and remember one thing: the questions has to be different from the answers that are already available in your pitch deck and your website and your LinkedIn page. You cannot ask the same questions which are very easily, are answered in your pitch deck. No.
They wouldn't come up as questions, right? Because the information is there. So if you have
Yeah.
you have a competition slide, then the very basic question of who are you competing with might not come up. But you're talking about information that might not be included in the pitch deck, and that can be of interest to the investor.
Yeah. Typically, what we have seen is people don't talk about defensibility. Like, for example, how much barriers they have built. How difficult it is for another company to get into this field and be successful. People talk about traction, but they don't really talk about revenue streams and what they have, their finance. Yeah, deep questions. People don't give all the deep answers. Like anything the founder feels very sensitive to give it out in a TED deck. But all these sensitive answers can be given via the AI chatbot or via the investor Q&A. Anyways, anything that you guys want to add on top of this? Because this is one thing which is so important for I think the founders.
No, I
All
think
right, let's go to the next one.
Covered.
Oh my God, this is a big one.
Yeah,
Actually,
I was gonna say oh my God, maybe we should have started here.
yeah. This is another huge one because there is a Harvard paper or a Wharton, the three Stanford, Wharton, and Harvard has done a paper specifically based on data from 3,000 plus founders who raised capital over the last 10 years. They have been able to correlate, and the name of the paper is Social is the New Financial. Just try to Google for it and you'll be able to get that paper. Social is the New Financial. So I have seen this hundreds of times. People underestimate social proof.
Maybe
Please
social
don't
proof
do that.
is a social proof. It's kind of like the academic term used in this paper, just to, it equates to online presence. So this is what happens. I need to share this because it's so, every single time it happens. So you have a startup that's, has an amazing product or service, right? That's got traction, that's got an amazing, like everything's lined up. And then the moment that you go and visit their LinkedIn, like the profiles of like founders and the C-suite and the team or the company LinkedIn profile, it's like 17 followers. They're like, what? Right? So, Anis, let me take it a step even further back. You mentioned the investor journey. Okay. In the past 2 years, that investor journey, because of the advent of social media, right, especially LinkedIn, there has been a shift of paradigm. An investor, before they decide to take a look at your pitch deck, will look at your LinkedIn profile, your company's LinkedIn profile, and will Google you. That's before looking at your pitch deck. That's kind of like the due diligence process to decide whether they're interested in even looking at your pitch deck. Now, I can guarantee you that, I was going to say 90% of the time, but maybe I'm exaggerating a bit. 80% of the time, founders spend the most time working on the pitch deck and not on building credibility, on their social, like within their social media, online presence. And I'm not talking about like curated, like beautiful Instagram. I'm just talking about business oriented, right? And if you're going fundraising, you need to shift that, you're catering to the investor persona, not to your customer, which is also something that sometimes we have a little bit of difficulty kind of like walking clients through. So sorry, I get very passionate about this because I think it's also one of the biggest pitfalls and maybe some of the easiest things you can fix as a founder, and you should not lose sight of it.
Absolutely. So look, I think, founders often give me examples, right? Oh, look at this amazing company, DeepSeek. It has created such a huge thing, and they don't have like, anything on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's really, they became famous and then their Twitter was on fire, right? Uh, yeah, anecdotes are amazing, right? But please don't, go there. Just build simple social proof. You don't need a million followers on LinkedIn or Twitter, right? Just have a decent profile, a decent banner, a decent headline, a decent about section, a few posts, a clean look. Just look, credible enough, because you could have, a design agency might have done your pitch deck and, you look really cool. But when people look at your earned proof, which is, let's say, Twitter or LinkedIn, immediately things
Yeah.
doesn't add up.
Yeah. And I think the name of the game is credibility. That's why I said it's not like, we're not talking about fancy, super sophisticated design.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
credibility. Just
Yeah.
try to take a step back, look at it and say, would I trust this person with my money? Right? Because that's
Yeah.
basically what an investor is doing. Like, are they serious enough? Do they know enough about the space? Do they engage with interesting and valuable content? So that's everything that's playing in the back of investors at the time. Again, just before even making the decision to take a look at your deck. So yeah, this is not a popularity contest. We're not talking about that. We're talking about building credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many levels of credibility. When specialists like us, get involved, then we will work, just on this, to a completely different level. But what we want to tell you today is you should take this seriously. You can do it yourself. The basics, if you can put in place, you don't need the mega specialist work, right? Just get the basics right, and you'll be good enough for Web Summit. All right. Anything you want to add on this, Benny? I think it's so obvious, the social proof. I know, yeah, it's different in different countries, but I wanted to hear your thoughts as well.
Yes, mostly I saw many Chinese pitch deck and their presentation to investors. Also, they highlight the advisories, because usually like university scientific research can add the technology.
Yeah, the proof.
Yes, so this is also very important to add.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's an amazing, especially if your startup is deep tech, biotech, construction, mechanical, anything that is tech, right? Then a single paper published in a decent, even if it is not decent, a few papers published and a bunch of founders from universities, PhDs, immediate credibility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have come across, thank you for bringing this, it's not social proof, but it is some proof. We need to figure out a way to add that value into this.
And into like credibility. Yeah. So because you have like the market studies, the traction, but then if you've got some academic, context or paper to kind of like back what you're addressing, what you're saying, how you're solving a problem, then that obviously adds to the entire.
I think we should, this one deserves a separate point, we should call it use academic proof, right? Just like social proof. I think it really deserves a separate heading, because in the current deep tech world, right, academic proof can encompass all these other things in one shot, right?
Yeah.
Definitely great point, Benny. We can use that as a separate point altogether. So social proof, academic proof. Also, I would say, your own team, right? I think that is also a great proof, isn't it? Like, let's say I just met another, architecture construction company just a few days ago in London, the sustainability ventures, VC pitch. There are two founders. One founder is a sales and marketing client focused founder, The other founder is a PhD in material science from Cambridge. And you see, this founder has got paper after paper after paper, and this founder has got client after client after client, right? And when you see them together, you are like, wow, this is a perfect team.
It's a power
Right?
couple.
It's a power couple, and both are ladies. Both of them amazing. I was like, wow, this is something that I would invest in, right? They didn't show social proof. They didn't. I'm not sure academic proof was there. It's just a perfect dance,
profiles.
of people. It's a people or team. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, we'll have to find a name for that.
Yeah. I think in Chinese VC environments, like the Chinese investors, they will highlight team as the priority to see if this startup is deserved to invest. Team is very important.
Yeah, it's one of it's the main criteria. Like you can have everything else, but if you have a strong team, then I think that's kind of like and we talked about it in the last webinar, it's the tipping point. And that's why it brings us back to what Vinny was saying earlier on about talking to investors, because if they connect you, not only, they're not only your source of money, but they can connect you with talent, then that is kind of like an essential piece to the entire puzzle.
Absolutely.
And the team members composition also very important. Sometimes startups, they only have tech experts, but they don't have marketing experts. And this also very dangerous for the startup to get more scale up opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this is not a big point. I still wanted to add it. Negotiate simple terms. Don't go for complicated things, especially in your pre-seed level. There are enough templates from Y Combinator, safe templates. So just stick to them, and you should be, if you don't know what these are, just, go to ChatGPT and say, explain these terms, like you're explaining to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and, you'll understand this. It's really easy, but make a conscious effort to understand terms, even though there is nothing, on the table, right? Make a conscious effort before you hit Web Summit. Okay. Last point, I think, follow up relentlessly, right? I don't think this needs any explanation whatsoever. There are founders who do this. There are founders who don't do this.
And say most founders don't, Anis. And so I just like, because this is like, again, a lot of time and effort put into networking to then have most of that go to waste. So
I think that's the end of our. Oh my God! There's one more track conversation. So it is also important. We'll cover this maybe next week. But point is, many founders don't do this. But if you look at the first point I talked about, identify the 100 investors that matter to you from the 1,000 that might be attending. Right now, you have identified the 100 in the first point. You have researched them on the second point. You have understood what is their priority on the third point. You have a very clear, elevator pitch to each one of the 100 people in their own words as a fourth point, and then you keep traveling to the fifth, sixth, and there's a 10th one is you should be able to follow up, and you should be able to track every conversation with every one of those 100 from the beginning to the end. You will do really well. If you think about all these 10, there is nothing really specialist about any of these things, right? It is child's play, and you should be able to do this yourself. You're a founder.
Yeah. Well, but if you have any questions that you would like to ask us, any follow-ups, again, this is just not too complicated, but it is time consuming. So, just please approach us. You have our LinkedIn's, we're very prompt in responding. So we love to engage in conversation. So we hope to see everyone that attended today, next Thursday. And if you want us to talk about any specific topics or address any challenges that you're facing as a startup, please let us know ahead of time, and we'll be more than happy to address those. Thank you so much, Anis and Vinny, and all the Step Up One team. Thank you so much for helping us put this together.
Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you soon. I'll see you next week, actually.
Bye. Bye.